It's the Kink Consultant Podcast, where we're turning up the heat on all things kink and dating, relationships, and pop culture. So close the door, plug in your headphones, and let's get down to it.
We're bullying Amanda first thing in the morning. Hello,
Yeah,
good morning.
Hello, and welcome to my show, the Kink Consultant Podcast, where this week I have on my Bizdom, Brenda, and my amazing podcast editor, Tish. This is Tish's first time on the podcast. I want to make her feel welcome, especially since she's the one who makes me sound good week to week. The way this came about is I realized, Tish, I don't know what your experience is with kink, right? And I text you and I said, like, do you have any questions about kink? This is episode maybe 30 something, right?
Yeah.
I finally think, like, I bet some of this is strange to Tish. But you kind of came back and you were like, actually, some of your stuff has been answered, but you came back with your own idea of what we should talk about on this podcast. Can you tell me, like, how did you even come up with this idea? Had you read the book? Take it away, Tish.
So, hello everybody. My name is Tish. Okay, so it was so funny because Amanda was asking me, like, am I dating? And I'm like, I'm married.
Did you know Tish was married?
I did, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so like I have zero experience in kink. I'm very, very vanilla. And my experience with kink is pretty much same as Brenda. We read all these books and I'm a romance novel girly. I love rom-coms. I love romantic dramas. I eat that shit up. Like every single week, I just need like one rom-com. It could be like from the 90s, like the new ones. It's like my guilty pleasure. Like sometimes it's so sappy, but I love it.
Wait, do you have a favorite like 90s rom-com movie or?
So I think like a classic would be, I forget the title, but the one with Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman is one of my favorite movies.
Classic.
Yes.
Classic.
Like,
Absolutely.
I'm always wishing that my husband were that rich so I could like go in a store and like go shopping.
Hold on, I'm dying. I mean, yeah, the money aspect is always nice. Like,
Yeah, that's
Well-
my favorite part.
So I'm assuming
Yeah.
that your book style is you love to read books about being taken care of, right?
I like those sappy novels. Like sometimes it's borderline cringe, or maybe they're even cringe. It's just so satisfying, you know, like the cringe is so satisfying. I think it was high school. Do you remember Meg Cabot, like the author of Princess Diaries?
Okay, yep.
I would read her young adult romance novels, right? And then eventually it evolved into something more spicy and until like I came across these books with kinks in them. And then that's pretty much my knowledge or experience, quote unquote, with kink. And I was telling you about this book that I just read because it was marketed as like a kink romance novel. And it was so funny because when I read it, for me, it was already kinky. But like, if you go to TikTok and like you listen to all these reviews, all these people are saying that it's very vanilla. So I'm like, I'm working with a kink consultant. Why don't I just consult? Like, is this kinky for you or something? And then you had that episode where you were talking about your dating life and all that. And you talked about having this contract with
Friends
your,
with benefits.
yeah, with friends with benefits. And I'm like, oh, I read this in a book. So, and that was that one. Cause like they had a negotiation or something. So I'm like, huh. I should ask Amanda about this. Because like, that is so interesting.
Checklist,
Yeah, and
negotiation checklist with all of the things that you're okay with versus not okay with. And then
yes.
sometimes there's a contract that goes on top of that. That's sort of like, these are the rules that we're agreeing to and these are the boundaries and
Yeah.
limits.
I guess like for a vanilla relationship, of course you also have that conversation with your partner, like which ones you like, which ones you don't like. But then I believe it's much more different because there are very different consent layers or aspects into something that's, I would say, like not normal.
The book you asked us to read, you hadn't read it either, Brenda, right?
No, I hadn't read it either. So the second she mentioned it, I literally ran to Audible.
And the book is The Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Okay, thumbs up or thumbs down on the book?
I'm
You're
in the middle.
I'm in the middle as well because like I've read her other books and I have something to compare that to. My rating is the book overall, not just like the kink aspect of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The book itself was great. I think what was going on in my personal life at the same time as this actually tilted me towards a thumbs down because I was like, the main female character, Vandy, asks for nothing. Do you know what I mean? I'm a thumbs down on the book, and it has actually very little to do with the book itself, I'll admit that, because in a different mindset, I think I would have enjoyed it.
I disagree because I am on that same path as you, and that's why I'm like, like I am kind of that halfway between not liking it and like the storyline was cute. Don't get me wrong, it had rom-com feels, not kink feels, in my opinion.
I actually wanted to ask this though, because I didn't have a problem with the kink. I think it was a really true representation of what 95, maybe more, percent of kinky couples are actually doing. Like, if that was the level of kink I had in my life, I would be happy.
Okay, wait, time out, because I thought that this book had zero kink in it.
So they actually didn't explore it, but it's more like implying sex. But the things they talked about and the way he spoke to her and the dominant presence he had, all super sexy and kinky.
Absolutely.
I think they didn't explore it as deeply, but I'm like, as a concept, yeah, that's all I'm looking for.
Okay, so I would have rather they have actually explored the kinky stuff that they were talking about, because that's a huge part of maybe what you do. We're trying to promote a lot of the safe kink and all that kind of stuff. So it's one thing to say that I love being spanked, but when you're having this and you're going through it, like, actually talk about it. Actually do the spanking in the way that you want it. You know what I mean? Show the scene.
True, because when I think about it now, upon reflection, it's about like an Olympic swimmer and a diver. So these are like really type A people to begin with. The amount I learned about diving and swimming from the book
Yes.
compared to the amount I learned about kink, you're right, it didn't give me the same insight into kink at all. Spoilers, I guess. Ken and Lucas dated for 7 years and it just didn't work out. And like, because the kink wasn't there, and I'm like, that's realistic to me. So I liked that aspect of it. He meets someone kinky. They create lists of what they're into or not. So that checklist exists. And I love that that happened. You're right. They didn't go through the list 50 Shades of Grey style where they go through everything extreme and that creates a buzz. But I think they went through it enough that I was like, okay, I understand what both of these people are about. The one thing they didn't talk about is the dynamic they wanted. It was what they were into or not into, but zero about the dynamic.
Can you talk more about that? So, like, what kind of dynamic were you looking for? Honestly, as a non-kink person, like, what does that even mean?
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, there's a list of things you're into or not into, right? But how do you put it together and how does it get enforced and at what frequency? Is it just in the bedroom? Is it something that follows them through life? Because he was quite dominant in all areas of their life together and he looked out for her, but he also had such a presence. But it did sound like the kink was really only in the bedroom. But they never actually talked about whether or not this made it outside of the bedroom, which is like the most basic level of creating a dynamic. It's like, what are the boundaries? How are we containing this? Are we containing it at all, or does it leak into every part of life? Or is it contained in the bedroom, contained in the home? How much autonomy does she have? Does she choose the clothes she wears in the morning? Is she making decisions about her own health? There are extremes in there. So I'm just saying, I'm giving you all of the examples, Tish, to say these are the different types of conversations you have to decide on the dynamic. But they didn't have any discussion like that. And also, he would just go off and travel and not tell her he was going places, you know, and when he'd be back or things like that. And she was just sort of like, okay. So I'm like, that's not a relationship. That's not a dynamic. That's a booty call.
How does a 24/7 dynamic look like?
A 24/7 dynamic could be master slave, where it's very intense and it's a 24/7 power exchange, where the submissive in the relationship is making very few decisions, or it's very defined. It's like, here's what you have control over, here's what you don't. I've heard of relationships where the dom picks out the person's clothes in the morning, tells them what they're going to eat for the day, how often they're going to eat, keeps a really close eye and makes a lot of decisions for the sub. That's an example of 24/7. In these dynamics, there could be any level of consequence for not doing what the dom said. There could be actual physical punishment or impact, like we've discussed, like spanking or flogging, or there could just be sort of like a soft dom type. It takes on a caretaker role for the sub and it makes these rules out of encouragement. The point is, the power exchange exists throughout the day, and it's a constant where the dom has the power or is in that leadership role and the sub is following and being led. Then there's just a bedroom dynamic where at night during sex or during a scene, which is a contained amount of time where you both decide, okay, we're going to engage in this type of play for X amount of time, and these are the things we're going to explore in that time. That could just be in the bedroom dynamic. And then sometimes there's sort of like it doesn't always need to be perfectly defined. For those like in the bedroom types, for some people it can come out at the kitchen table or like out in public. They dip in and out of it, but that comes with an understanding of boundaries, like a discussion about boundaries, and sort of find your way organically with that one. And no matter which one of these we're talking about, you still have to find your way organically because you can't just jump into 24/7. Things need to develop first as a relationship and then into these like, it's almost like the vanilla part of the relationship, unless you're just looking for a dynamic, is the foundation, which I think also was a little lacking in the book.
Hey, if you're loving this episode or honestly even just vibing with the podcast overall, go ahead and tap that 5-star rating. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps us grow this kinky little corner of the world. Because that's what we're building here, right? A space to feel seen, get curious, and explore. All from the privacy of our own headphones. And if something made you laugh, cringe, gasp, or pause to reflect, drop a comment. I want to know what stuck with you or shocked you.
You specifically commented on this person not communicating that he's leaving or like he's having to travel. And like, I was wondering, since that was also like something that you're big on, communication in general. Maybe you could give us an update on how things are with the German.
It is done. The writing was on the wall in the last episode and it is done. Side note to all of my clients, friends, listeners who I have never heard from who reached out to me about the German. I appreciate the well wishes and the confidence in my ability to find somebody more suited to me. That isn't what actually impacted my decision, but it was really good to hear from people. It was also a little jarring to go into a client session, by the way, and have clients say, so what's happening with the German? And I'm like, and when I talk to clients, I give them real updates on my life. It's coaching and I want to be real with them so they're real with me because I feel we owe each other the vulnerability. But like, damn, to start on the back foot of like explaining your own relationship is woof. So ended it. And here was the final nail in the coffin. He was trying better to communicate, but like he'd also acknowledged that I'd said them before, and that was frustrating because it was like there was no plan of how communication would improve. He said he'd try and he was trying. The nail in the coffin. He had to go on an impromptu work trip. Proactively, I said, when will you be back? And he didn't answer for 5 hours. He's like, I'll be back in 2 days. This is my travel plans. And then I said, I shouldn't have had to proactively ask this question of like, when you'll be back. And he was like, well, I was traveling with a colleague. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like,
is your colleague sending me the text messages?
He was like, I'm just like, I'm sorry. Are you sure you weren't traveling with your wife? Like, what do you mean you couldn't text me at any point because you were traveling with your colleague? I didn't even need details of where he was going.
I am so married that I tell my husband the route that I'm taking to take my kids to soccer. Like, honey, I'm on the road. I'm taking this road and this road. Love you. See you in a bit. Like,
okay, I want that level of communication. That's extreme. Yeah. In hindsight, thinking through all of this, there are a couple of things. Number one, I'm like, okay, we were still early on in our relationship, but I know the writing was on the wall that like communication is so important. And he admitted that he was not a great text communicator. The aftercare I say I need, like one of the aftercare things that I tell people is I need you to text me the day after. Like you being available to text is important to me. I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who couldn't text. Just the lack of communication. And even though he was trying and I could tell he was, it just wasn't enough. I'm going into the weekend now and like we had plans for this weekend and I'm like, ooh, how am I filling my weekend up? So there's like a little bit of just being lonely.
I've said this before, you love hard and you love very fast and that's okay.
I fall hard and fast. That is true.
I think this is one of the things that connects us together is that we romanticize our little things. You know what I mean? We put all of our energy into these little bubbles. And so when one little thing happens, it crushes our soul because we give absolutely everything to something. We are so loyal in the moment. We do all of these things because we just love it. That's just the way we are. That one little thing can throw us off hugely.
It's kind of also just, I allow everything to fall into this upset of like, okay, I moved from New York City, a city I loved, for an ex. We bought and sold a house because we broke up. And then my dog passed away and I'm just like, can I just have one fucking win? Like, that's so unfair. I have an amazing social life here. I have an amazing group of people around me, but it's tough. Dating is tough. Also, in 4 hours, I have a coffee date, and tomorrow I have a sushi date with other people. So I'm like, I'm not even back on the apps. It's just organically happened of like people heard I was single, I was asked out. It's fun. So it's not all, oh, woe is me. It's just sometimes when you put it all together, it's tough.
Absolutely. And your feelings are 100% valid. It is okay to sit here and have these types of fuck me. But you know what? You get 4 hours to feel fuck me.
Yeah. No, this person is like that I'm going on the coffee date with. He's super nice. We're both really into kink. In fact, I hired this guy to build me dungeon furniture.
I think other people in your life will agree with me when I say this is what you need, is you need people in your space.
Oh my
It
God.
doesn't need to be your kink space, but a kink space.
Yes, Brenda, you sound like my mother right now. I got a phone call from my mother after the sex party episode dropped. She didn't listen to it, but her friends listened to it. But there was just something about that episode. We recorded it and then we released some other episodes first, so I sort of wasn't thinking anymore about what was in that episode. I called her and she's like, oh, I'm here with my friends and we're talking about the Smex party. So then she's like, I'm going to call you back. Evidently her friends leave and she does call me back. She's very caring, but I do feel like I'm getting lectured by my mother. And she's telling me, Mandy, you need to date in your world. It's almost like a scarcity mindset. Like she's so worried for me that I'm not going to meet someone. And she's like, it needs to be in your world, someone who understands this. I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to sex parties all the time. It's like part of my job that I went, like, and I don't want her listening to the episode for sure, because like, I mean, in there, I'm talking about family. Turn this off now if you're here. In there,
There was a part when you whipped out.
Yeah, my boobs are out. I'm masturbating. There's a bunch of people watching me. Like
The glory hole.
I didn't do the glory hole. Like I wasn't taking part in it, but yeah, I wanted to see the glory hole. And nobody listening here can't tell me that they wouldn't be a little bit curious too. Brenda, message received loud and clear from multiple caring people. But like it goes against my ethos and I need to figure this out. If you can teach people to dom you, because I do believe you can.
I think you did a great job of teaching him or guiding him. Well, I didn't see the entire thing, but like based on your story, it seems like you were very active and like helping him what he needs to learn to be able to dom you. But it's just like there is no follow through on his end. Like he's not being a good student. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. That's the other thing. So I had to work this hard to get someone to text me. I mean, getting someone to dom me, I wasn't capable. And that was part of my decision too. Because it's like, okay, I could probably work through this. Like we could meet in the middle about the texting. But then what kind of dom would that person be for me?
Yeah. There's a difference between you knowing that you can teach people because we know it's possible and you physically needing someone more experienced for yourself. Just because you teach this doesn't mean you need it to be your life
journey. Yeah, and I don't want it to be my journey because just for everyone listening, even if you meet the kinkiest person out there, you are still going to have to teach them how to dom you
your way.
Yes,
exactly.
We find the relationship together. Just like, and I stick to this, you teach people to love you too. You teach people what your love languages are and you work together to make sure you're making your partner feel seen. I wasn't feeling seen in whatever I was just in. And I actually think that's like harder on me.
Exactly. So like we knew this from the beginning. You need someone who's not going to be traveling 24/7 because if they're doing any of that kind of stuff, they don't have time for you. Like we've just experienced this in two different spaces. Friends and Benefits wasn't there for you all of the time because there were outside sources that needed his time.
That's the thing, Brenda. I didn't mind the traveling because I liked having time to work and then time to be with someone. It was the lack of communication in between that made me feel I needed to feel included. I wanted to feel included and I felt excluded in his life. And that's what really hurt. Honestly, if I were to sum it up, that would be it. I didn't feel included in his life and that's what hurt.
Okay, so traveling is fine, but maybe not to that extent. Because how else are you going to actually get to know each other? Let's face it, if you guys are both consistently off the planet somewhere else. To loop it back to the book too, though. So it's the German. Right? So I think that there is a lot to be said about the culture around a lot of it too. So like in the book, he had these same types of issues of communication, right? He would pop in and out.
But yeah, same type of thing.
Like actually the doming itself in the book too, like he was a very natural. And I think a lot of that has to do with like the way that they are. They're very direct. There is no like walking on eggshells with a lot of these cultures because they just, I don't understand. Why do we have to say all of the things when this is all I need to say?
Yeah. That's a good point too. There's like cultural differences in dating. Growing up in Ireland, I knew a lot of different Europeans and kind of understood that, but I didn't realize I think another 11 years back in the States has made me be a little bit more into the niceties and the flowery stuff as opposed to that. Because I'm going to tell you, Irish men are not romantic either. I did post about the episode, the dating episode. I put a poll in of like, where are you? Like, have you had this happen? And so many people said yes, and I had to move on, or yes, I'm in it right now. And then I got so many DMs, and that was, I don't know,
That's
the
nice.
community part. It was really nice. It was nice to hear other people's stories, their feelings, their hurt. It was bonding.
Good.
Yeah, there were
Good.
comments on your Spotify who were like, oh, I'm going through the same thing. Thank you for this episode.
It made it so worth it because, you know, I do get like an emotional overshare hangover. Like I shared so much of myself and I would like doing that, but it feels messy at times. It's tough to be so out there.
Okay, can we limit back to the book a little bit? I want to know about the communication back and forth and how they kind of did that contract piece, okay? Is this actually happening in real life? Do you have an actual list? Like when you're meeting people and you're saying, here's my list. Like I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but like I guess you watch movies and you do all of these things and you have this Hollywood picture of things and, you know, they don't wear condoms. They don't do any of these types of things that should be happening in real life, but they don't. Is this actually happening? Are we pausing on a one night stand and going just, or is that not even happening on a one night stand?
If you're having a one night stand, the cut and dry method is just, these are the things I want you to do to me. These are the things you can do. Do not go outside of these. Right? My boundaries is everything.
So you are having a conversation.
I wouldn't recommend doing this on a one night stand. Personally, I don't do it on a one night stand because it's too intimate and intense. Like sex is sex, but kink is intricate. You need to be able to trust the person. If you want to do impact play with someone, how do you know they can aim? If you want them to choke you, how do you know they're not going to like collapse your trachea because they're holding you so tight? There are too many elements for you to safely do this on a one night stand. So yeah, all of the conversations, the contracts are extreme, but the list of things that you're into, super important. You should be negotiating. Like I do pickup play, and pickup play is when you go to a party, there's no sex. For the party, the type of party I'm talking about. I go to a kink party. Pickup play is where you meet someone there and then you play together, right? I have set questions about their experience level. I tell them how I want to feel at the end of the scene so they understand what emotions I'm looking for, so they know that I'm not looking to feel totally spent and beaten up. I'm looking to feel like cathartic remorse for something that I tell them I need to be punished for. And
but these are specific parties that you're going there with these types of intentions already.
Exactly. I'm not doing
That's the difference.
I don't have one night stands.
Not one night stands is the conversation. I just mean like you're dating, you're doing all of these things, and like let's say you're on your third date and the people are like, yep, you know, you're the type of person who are on the third date, the green light for sex is there. Are you pausing? Because I know you enough to know that you need a little bit of that kind of pain, right? You need that. Are you going into that third date going, FYI, I need you to do this before I can actually come for you today?
Because it's me, it's been a constant conversation throughout. So I've been talking about it a lot. What actually happens on the night is a quick conversation beforehand. Yes, you're right.
Okay.
It does happen, but like that's not everyone's experience. However, the checklist that we're talking about, for people who enter into a dynamic, there are a lot of kinksters who have their checklist that is available to share. In fact, I have a ton of people's checklists that they have sent to me, like my clients who have done it in advance and like, here, I want to show you the things I'm into. And I'm really happy to look at it. And I'm always interested because I have so many newbies to kink who might not know that exists. Like I know I keep saying this, I need to create my own list to get out to people. So maybe I can get it together so that I can just like share with people, here's the checklist, here's how you fill it out. This is a good thing to go through with your partner. If they decide to go in that deep, right? Because those lists are like hundreds of lines long of different type of play that can happen. And that can be really intense for newbies.
Okay, I have a question. So you said that you go to these parties and then you play together. And then in your other episodes, you also mention a thing called a play partner. So what happens in these plays and what is a play partner? Does the play partner become a boyfriend, girlfriend, like a significant other, or like what do you guys do?
That's a really great question. When I say play partner, I mean someone who you are just exploring kink with, and they might even still be your dom. It's nuanced. They might still be your dom and you're their sub. There might still be sex and kink, right? But there's no romantic involvement beyond the scenes and this dynamic. okay? When I do say play partner, I think I mean less dom sub, but I don't want to diminish people who are practicing as play partners in this way. It's really more of a top and bottom situation where the top is the one doing the action, the bottom is the one receiving the action, whether that's impact play or rope and bondage, whatever it is. Play partners are not romantically involved and they are just doing scenes together. And maybe there is a little bit of a dynamic, but when I say play partner, I'm not imagining a dynamic.
I'm learning a lot of new things from your episodes. So like there are a lot of kinks that it's like my first time to hear them. And then while I was preparing your episodes, it was when I was doing these research. So some of the kinks are not all sexual. Is that correct?
Great question. For some people, kink is sexual, and then for others, it's not. And then for others, it's a mix.
Yeah.
For me, although I have this punishment and discipline fetish, and I needed to be able to come, I can also feel fulfilled just having that need met. I like sex separate to my need for this. However, it is so enjoyable that I'm often turned on and want sex afterwards. I notice with a lot of men, and maybe they're interested in dominance and control and they want to try it, but for a lot of men, it's completely sexual and they want to be sexually dominant. And that is something that causes a rift between a lot of people who say they're looking for a dom and the sub. So like I know a lot of women are looking for a dom, but they don't mean that sexual dom, they mean that caretaker dom. And while sex might be part of it, it is not the focus. And then men are like, I'm a dom. And what they really mean is I'm a sexual dom and I want to take control in the bedroom. And I'm not saying either one is more valid than the other, but this is the communication gap that is happening.
My other question is, for the non-sexual kink, what is the goal? So like the sexual kinks, right? You do that so that you get satisfied and you orgasm basically. But how about for like the non-sexual kinks?
You know how sometimes you're feeling energetically drained or something, and then there's something that fills your cup up. Maybe it's hanging out with friends. Maybe it's hiding away and reading a book. And after you do it for an hour, you're like, I feel much better. It's almost like when you have a kink, you're not experiencing it, your battery level goes down. So then you need it recharged by having this experience. That's how I describe it. That's how I feel it in the world. It's like, I really need some structure. I need a dominant presence in my life for punishment or something. Like when I don't have it, my battery starts to drain a little bit. But when my need is met, it's refilled. It's tough because sometimes I go months without having this need met. I'm only speaking for myself, but from talking to other people who have these kinks and these interests where it's not always totally sexual. And yes, there are often erotic undertones to it. But for some people, they really just enjoy this part of their life and it recharges their battery. I think that's the best way to put it. That's a need they have, just like some people, it's like when you crave a salty food or you crave a sugary food. I'm always craving sugar. Some people are always craving salt and they need that. They need it. That's what kink outside of sex can be like.
There's such a huge scale to this. I'm listening to Tish and she's talking about her book interest in like the rom-com stuff. And like she thought that this book was very kinky to her. And then I think of the filth that I've been reading and going, oh my God, like I wouldn't necessarily enjoy any of the stuff that's actually happening inside of the book. I enjoy reading it for whatever fucked up reason that my brain loves.
Okay, for everyone who hasn't read Deep End, and I do think it's a book worth reading, personally, for everyone who hasn't read it, like the issue we're talking about is they talk about kink things and he says some sexy stuff and says good girl, and that turns her on. So there's like some praise going on. There's caretaking going on in that he looks out for her and is worried about her. There is sexual dominance in that he is taking control in the bedroom. But that is the long and short of it. There's no impact. There's nothing beyond that. So I think I've really just encapsulated everything that happens that's kinky in the book. Brenda,
that was my number one note. Like literally, I'm on chapter 40 and all he's done is spanked her. Like I got so mad. So mad.
Wait, time out though. I took notes too of sexy things that happen throughout the book that would be for me that I was like, why can't I find a man who understands this? So she doesn't say these things. In chapter 20, he kind of looks at her and says that she's unraveling, right? And I think that to be seen in a moment of just despair and like have it called out and named, you feel seen. And so much of kink, especially for me, is about feeling seen. Chapter 25, he says, you just want to be enough. I felt seen by Lucas in that moment because that, as a sub, sometimes when I'm in a dynamic with the right partner as a sub, a dom can make me feel like I'm enough. And while I don't want to give anybody that power in real life, to be able to give them that power in a dynamic or a scene is really nice. It's comforting. I also like in chapter 26, there's some education that happens. They explain what a scene is. And also, she calls out the fact that naming a dom sub is cumbersome, is what she says. And I think that that is a good point. Final note, chapter 27, he names what she wants. There's something very hot in that. That's like during their first sex scene. So throughout the book, there are these dominant traits or things you're looking for in a partner that as a sub, I'm like, I want someone to know these things and understand these things about me. And I think that's the part that hits really well and is probably going to be so appealing to a lot of vanilla people.
I feel like now that I'm understanding more about what kink is, and I feel like the way you're explaining it, Amanda, it's more of like the technical side of it, you know, like the negotiation, the talking, and all that. And then probably like with what's going on in these dark romance books, I feel like now I'm understanding that maybe the dark romance books are more fantasy than kink.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. It's like that's not really going to happen in that way. So it is a lot of fantasy. But then there are books that bridge the gap a little bit better of it being much more realistic and still being kink and dirty and like intense, but without that. We're not talking fantasy like fantasy novels. We're talking fantasy like real versus imaginary scenarios.
Yeah, because like from what I'm getting based on like the other episodes as well, every single step has consent in it. Like with these parties that you go to, with these couples that you meet, with their own play partners and all that, like there's consent in every aspect. And that's not really something that you read on these books. Like they just do it.
Right.
So it's so true. A lot of people ask me questions about, well, is this kinky or is that kinky? And my answer is always around consent because I'm like, is it through the lens of consenting to it? Because if it is, you automatically put a layer on it of this is a power exchange and we're discussing it out in the open. If it's not there, then I don't view it as kink because even though it might be a kinky thing, but until it's done through the lens of consent and negotiation, I don't think it's kinky. I think it's problematic. Someone just asked me about, is pushing someone's head down during a blowjob kinky? And I'm like, it can be if you've talked about it and that's been negotiated and then you understand there's an agreed upon power exchange. If not, it's just a dick move. The consent piece, it has to be part of it or it's not kink.
I think what with a lot of these like fantasy books, though, there is a level of consent for most of them. Now, some of them, you're right, but they actually have unconsent consent or whatever. What do you call that, Amanda?
Consensual non-consent, where you kind of put your boundaries in place and it's like safe words still exist, but there's a lot of free reign in that too.
So I think the fantasy world plays with that very strongly in a lot of different spaces.
And this brings up an interesting point about trigger warnings. And many kinksters, we really want trigger warnings at the beginning of books. But at the same time, I'm also like, this is fantasy and it needs to be understood that you're going in and watching fantasy. It's like TV in the 70s, though, where there were people out there who thought that was real. So I guess there is some responsibility on authors to say, this is what happens in this book. It's not real. This isn't a real representation or it shouldn't be practiced this way. The way I always describe it is it's easier to suspend your disbelief if it is in a fantasy world, like a true non-world. Whereas when it's tied to actual reality and it feels like something that could happen, it can affect us a lot more because there's a frame of reference, a real lived frame of reference. What I'm going to say about the kink side of the book is that it might not be inherently super kinky. There might be no CNC or specific kinks that are explored, but the emotional involvement and dynamic is partly there in the way he sees her. However, I don't believe he's showing up enough for her. So he swoops in and says all the right things when he's there, but then what we don't go through is how she must be feeling in the days that he's away and she's not hearing from him.
We see her stress about it, like she's freaking out because he's not communicating, but there's no real communication on her part about it.
She like makes snide remarks about it as opposed to handling it head on. I mean, that's realistic. I think a 21-year-old would approach
You're probably
it.
right.
Yeah, but
Dang it.
I had moments in it where I was like, wait, if I had just went along with it for longer, would it have all worked out? Like fantasy questions. Like communication matters. It should have mattered more in the book too. I felt it was out of character that he would just leave. He'd be so good at being a dom and paying attention to her, but would not consider her in a lot of what he was doing.
Yeah. You were in the moment when they were in front of each other. He was so good and attentive, and he notices all of the little things about her, but then doesn't notice that she's upset when he doesn't communicate whatsoever.
Also, what is so funny about this is in this book, this girl is struggling with German, even though he's Swedish. She does start learning Swedish for him on Duolingo, but he buys her the Duolingo subscription, which is a nice move. I think I was feeling a lot similar, but I would be talking to Brenda about things and she'd be like, have you read this book yet? Because she was dying to like show the parallels. It was really interesting. But I'm not a 21-year-old diver. I was not dating a 21-year-old Olympic swimmer. It was a different world, but there were some similarities. Okay, here is my final thoughts on The Deep End by Ali Hazelwood through the lens of the Kink Consultant. What I'm going to say is, was it that kinky or spicy? On a scale of 1 to 10, the kink itself was probably a 2. What I will say about it that I really liked is there was nothing dangerous. There were no boundaries crossed. It was all talked about and consent was discussed. So like the kink safety was there. The communication was not there, and everybody knows, at least by now, that is my biggest pet peeve. So I think that if you are going to be in a dynamic like this, you need to be able to advocate for your own needs. And I wasn't seeing that on either side, actually. It was sort of like they just sort of fell into what they were doing while they talked about it. There was no conversation and naming the actual, like what the dynamic would look like. And that was the biggest sort of plot hole for me in the world of kink. But it was a fun book and I enjoyed that part of it. As a kink book, no red flags, just some sort of like, this could be better.
But no green flags either.
Minimal green flags, true. With this episode, I am going to call it as the official kickoff of the Kink Consultant Book Club. Check the show notes to see how you can join. So join the Patreon, get into the book club, and we'll do a monthly call where we all get to discuss a kinky book that we've all agreed to read.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who might find it interesting. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, feel free to reach out. Email info@thekinkconsultant.com. Until next time, keep on kinking on.